Blackmagic has been making brilliant cinema cameras for a while now, and today we're looking at some of their most headlining cameras and checking out some of the key features of each. In today's video, we'll be looking at each of these cameras and highlighting some key features from each. We'll then be looking at some side-by-side comparisons, as well as looking at some sample footage before wrapping it up with some final thoughts. And remember to stay tuned for details about this week's giveaway. This is another video in our cinema lineup series of videos, so if you want to check out the rest, they're all on our YouTube channel, so be sure to go there and check them out. First off, let's look at the twins, the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 4K and 6K. These are the successors to Blackmagic's original Pocket Cinema Camera, a 1080p camera that could shoot Blackmagic RAW, all in a tiny pocketable package. Now, I'm gonna say right now, you are going to struggle to fit either of these cameras into your pocket, especially the 6K, but they still shoot amazing images. Looking at these two cameras side by side, you'll notice that they look pretty much the same, except the 6K is a little bit bigger and the snout is a bit larger. They both feature a really comfortable and ergonomic grip, making them feel really good in hand, and the record button is in a really good place where your finger will naturally rest. You also have another record button on the front. This applies to both of the cameras, and with very limited buttons on the camera, it has a very simple interface. I actually prefer this less cluttered approach because it makes sure that you won't accidentally hit a button while you're shooting and accidentally change a setting. Most of your settings will be controlled via this big LCD touchscreen on the back, allowing you to change things such as shutter speed, white balance, and ISO, and Blackmagic's super simple and easy to understand menus. I think that Blackmagic has one of the easiest to understand and easiest to use user interfaces in the cinema world, because when you pick it up, everything's laid out super nicely and it's really easy to understand. I personally don't shoot Blackmagic, but the first time I used a 6K on set, I was able to pick up how to use it straight away. Looking at the I/O, you have a 3.5mm mic in, a 3.5mm phones out, a full HDMI, a USB-C, a 12-volt power output, and a mini XLR with phantom power. I will quickly say that this back LCD does not tilt and isn't very bright. This makes it a bit difficult for shooting in bright conditions or sunny days, as it's a little bit awkward and really hard to see. However, Blackmagic has solved this problem with their 6K Pro, introducing a brighter screen that actually tilts, but we'll get into this later. You can always fix this by putting on a sun hood on this back LCD, which plenty of brands make, or attaching an external monitor via the full HDMI port on the side of the camera. The placement of the LCD also will make it difficult if you decide to rig this camera out with a big battery pack on the back, because of course the battery will be in the way of the LCD screen. These are small problems, to be honest, because this camera is still really good. In terms of recording media, both of these cameras can write to either CF Express, SD card, or you can use the USB-C out on these cameras to record directly into an SSD. Let's talk about numbers for a second. Both of these cameras have a dual native ISO of 400 and 3200, 13 stops of dynamic range, and can shoot ProRes or Blackmagic RAW. With the shooting resolutions, the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 6K can shoot 6K at up to 50 frames per second, and both of these cameras can actually go up to 180 frames per second, but both of them will be limited to 2.8K and you'll be cropped in quite a bit. The Blackmagic 4K can shoot 4K at up to 50 frames per second without any crop. Another limitation of these cameras comes in the 6K, where you can't shoot ProRes in 6K, you can only shoot Blackmagic RAW in 6K. That being said, the 4K ProRes that you get out of Blackmagic 6K is pretty good because it's oversampled 6K, giving you nice sharp footage. In case you haven't heard of Blackmagic RAW, Blackmagic RAW is Blackmagic's proprietary RAW codec. So you need something like Davinci Resolve from Blackmagic, which these cameras ship with a copy of in order to read the RAW codec. If you're a Premiere user and you want to use Blackmagic RAW, Blackmagic now provides a free plugin on their website. As for any other differences between these two cameras, there's really not too many. One of the main ones, other than the ones that we've already mentioned, is that the 6K comes in an EF mount and is a Super 35 camera, and the 4K has an MFT mount and is a Micro Four Thirds camera. So with the 4K, you get a 1.9 times crop, which can be annoying for some users, but you can always chuck on wider lenses as long as you keep this in mind. Both of these cameras are powered by Canon LPE batteries, and can I say right now that these absolutely chew through power. So you want to find a bigger power solution for both of these cameras in order to run them for their full potential. Otherwise, you'll be running through LPEs all day. There's plenty of power solutions out there for these cameras, including Blackmagic's Pocket Cinema battery grips. One last thing about these cameras is, as you may notice, they are a bit awkwardly sized and weighted. So if you were to fly them on a gimbal, you always want to make sure that you're balancing on your gimbal the night before your shoot, so you can make sure that you don't run into any weird clearance issues with the weird dimensions of this camera, and you don't have to buy an offset plate. Once again, as I said before, these cameras are pretty popular, so a lot of manufacturers have already come up with solutions for these problems. The 6K Pro is the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 6K and 4K's bigger brother. That annoying bigger brother that comes back home from college and does that little head rub to its little brothers. This camera does everything that the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 6K does with some little additional features. Physically, this is a bigger camera. It's a little bit taller and a little bit broader. At this point, you have absolutely no hope of fitting this into any pocket. But what you get with the bigger body is a few additional nice little features. First off, you get built-in NDs up to 6 stops. So you can do away with having to carry around a matte box with you on set, so you can just keep the camera like this. And in addition to that, you get a tilty touchscreen. We love tilty touchscreens because this means that you can shoot in high or low angles without having to awkwardly look at your screen, and this screen is a little bit brighter for shooting on those sunny days. As for I/O, you get an additional mini XLR with phantom power, bringing your total up to 2, and the rest of the I/O is pretty much the same as the other Blackmagic Pocket Cinema cameras. One of the main complaints about the other Blackmagic Pocket Cinema cameras is the shocking battery life with the internal batteries. This camera has solved that by doing away with the LPE batteries and using a Sony MPF battery. For those of you who aren't familiar with the MPF battery, this is a pretty common battery in the filmmaking world, being used to power monitors and lights. In fact, some of our lights back there are being powered by them right now. So a lot of people will already have a slew of these batteries in their arsenal. On top of this, Blackmagic makes a battery grip for this camera to store more MPF batteries that just screws on to the bottom of the camera. Talking about the bottom of the camera, this time we have 2 1/4-inch threads for you to mount your tripod plates to without the fear of twisting, as opposed to the other Blackmagic Pocket Cinema's 1 1/4-inch thread. Another accessory that Blackmagic makes for this camera is this top EVF. This EVF is really good for when you're shooting in really bright environments and you can't see your LCD screen. So you can just tuck this in and look through the EVF. This is also really good because you get nice stable footage when you're using the EVF, because you get your 3 points of contact, allowing you to eliminate any shake that may come from your hands. This camera does have one-shot autofocus as long as you have a compatible lens. What one-shot autofocus is a one-time autofocus similar to AF single if you're using a stills camera to help you set focus at the beginning of your shot, but it's not continuous, so you have to pull focus yourself manually after that. Similar to the Pocket Cinema 6K, this is a Super 35 EF mount camera with a dual native ISO of 400 to 3200. You also have 13 stops of dynamic range. You can shoot 6K at up to 60 FPS and 2.8K up to 120 FPS. ProRes is available from HD up to DCI 4K 60 frames a second, otherwise you are limited to shooting Blackmagic RAW. On this camera you can either shoot CFast, SD cards, or USB-C out directly to an SSD. Now let's talk about this camera. The Ursa Mini Pro 12K. Long ago, we've abandoned any hope of fitting any of these cameras into our pockets, but that's okay. 12K footage is a little bit bonkers. Most people don't even have above a 4K display. But the reason that you want to shoot 12K is the same reason that people would shoot 4K back when most of our media was 1080. So you can reframe and crop your footage however you want without any quality loss. Sharper source footage means sharper end product footage even if you're downscaling the quality. And this makes the footage perfect for applications such as VFX, chroma keying, or IMAX imaging, because the files are so big that you get the most amount of data points so you can track things for VFX. And it's just really, really fun to tell your friends that you're shooting with a 12K camera. As you may notice, this is more of an ENG style camera as opposed to the other cameras that we've looked at. So ENG just stands for electronic news gathering camera, which means that this camera is built for single operators with all of the interface laid out nicely as separate buttons, dials, or rocker switches, so you can operate this camera easily by yourself and without having to go through too many menus. As you can see, everything's laid out really, really nicely on the side. You also get a built-in ND of up to 6 stops on this nice stepped dial. I much prefer the step dial rather than the plus and minus buttons that we've been getting on a lot of cameras now, because this is just a lot more tactile and nice to use. As you may also notice, there's a little screen here that you can quickly monitor all of your audio levels, shutter speed / shutter angle, f/t stop, ISO and white balance at a glance. And if you open it up, you get your nice, beautiful LCD touchscreen where you can navigate all of your settings and your menus, as well as some additional audio controls, menu and playback controls, and dual CFast and SD card slots. On top of the camera, we have vents for cooling, 2 full XLR ports with phantom power, and some 1/4" threads for mounting accessories. On the back of the camera, you have a 3.5mm phones out, an SDI in, an SDI out, a BNC timecode in, a 12-volt power in, a USB-C port, which, similar to the other cameras, you can attach an SSD directly to. And on the side of the camera, we have a 3G SDI out, a 4-pin XLR out, and a rosette for mounting a side handle. As you may notice, we've rigged out this camera a little bit. But for those of you who've never shot or worked with a modular camera system like this, when you get the camera itself, unless you get it in a kit, it will only come with the body. It doesn't even come with a battery plate. You have to choose which battery plate to attach to the camera and then get all of your other accessories. So here we have the Blackmagic top handle for the Ursa, this nice EVF, a VCT shoulder mount plate, a Leica Cine lens, and a simple rosette wooden grip for a side handle. The camera body by itself with no accessories comes in at 2.3 kilograms, which is insanely heavy. But when you say a camera shoots 12K, I would expect no less. Something that you need to note about this camera is that it only shoots in Blackmagic RAW, so you can't shoot any ProRes or DNX. Even if you wanted to, if you went through one of these SDI ports, you wouldn't be getting anywhere near the full resolution. When you're shooting this camera anyway, you would be wanting to work with Blackmagic RAW so you can get the full resolution, as I said. This Super 35 camera shoots 12K at up to 60 FPS, 8K at up to 120, and 4K at up to 240. But as you're going through these resolutions and frame rates, you are getting more and more cropped in, so you need to look out for that. Now, We've talked about these cameras enough. Let's go out and look at some sample footage. Using these cameras in the field was quite a treat. Although we did notice with the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 4K and 6K, the non-tiltable LCD screen on the back made it a little bit hard to view at certain angles, and they weren't very bright, so shooting in the sunlight was a bit of an adventure. But the 6K Pro, with its tilting touchscreen and much brighter touchscreen, made it a lot easier to shoot lower angles and weird angles, and we could still see the LCD display. When it did get too bright, we were able to use the electronic viewfinder instead. The Ursa 12K was quite a beast to shoot with. It is incredibly heavy, so it's good that Blackmagic makes a shoulder mount option for this camera, and having an optional electronic viewfinder and that big LCD display really helped with viewing our image. You really need to be wary of your media choices when shooting with the Ursa 12K. Because we weren't using a compatible CFast card, we weren't able to shoot any clips longer than 3 seconds when using the Ursa 12K. If you want to check if your media is supported/compatible, you can check it out on the Blackmagic Design website. Another benefit with the Ursa 12K is that it uses the full sensor in all settings, so you can shoot 12K, 8K and 4K as long as you're not in the Super 16 mode using the full Super 35 scan. Ursa 12K also allows for full Super 35 recording in all recording resolutions, so you can shoot 8K, 12K and 4K all in Super 35. Before we move on, I just want to talk about this week's giveaway. This week we're giving you the chance to win some sweet George's merch. We've got embroidered beanies, we've got printed hoodies, t-shirts and long sleeves for both kids and adults in various sizes and colors. To make sure that you're in the running to win some of this sweet George's merch, like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow us on Instagram, find the post that details this giveaway, and I want you guys to comment down below, I want that sweet George's merch. The winner will be announced on our Instagram, so make sure you stay tuned. A recurring theme in today's cameras seem to be resolution, so I want to know what you guys think. Do you think that going beyond 4K is necessary, or do you think it's just a gimmick? Let us know in the comments down below. If you need any more information about the products mentioned in this video, they're all linked in the description. Follow us on Instagram for the latest in gear updates, tech news and giveaways. If you enjoyed this video, let us know by leaving a like and subscribing. Thanks heaps for watching and happy shooting.